Hare Krishna, everyone. Welcome to today's conversation, our regular conversations on Saturdays. आप सबका स्वागत है. Welcome to everyone on YouTube and Facebook. Today we have a very exciting conversation for you about astrology. Astrology is something you either really believe in or you don't believe in at all. I feel like there's a lot of confusion. कई लोग समझते हैं एस्ट्रोलॉजी क्या है और उसमें अच्छी तरह से मानते हैं और फॉलो करते हैं, और कई लोग को बिल्कुल विश्वास नहीं है एस्ट्रोलॉजी में क्योंकि समझ नहीं पा रहे कि क्या है. तो आज का जो कॉन्वर्सेशन है, it's to do with Vedic astrology, trying to understand how it works and how it's still relevant in our day-to-day life. How to understand astrology, how to see the use of it, and sometimes there's also pitfalls. I know many people who are also very addicted almost to astrology. हर छोटी बात में astrology को किसी astrologer को पूछते हैं. So there's also pitfalls, I feel like. So either it can be too much or too little. I'm so excited to introduce our guest today, Dr. Radhikesh Das ji. He was a physician, practicing physician for 20 years. वे doctor थे, अब retired हैं. So he practiced medicine for 20 years and now is retired, living with his family, his wife, his 3 daughters in Alachua, USA. And he was sharing how his grandparents, his father, his grandfather and great-grandfathers were all Ayurvedic doctors and astrologers themselves. So ये इनकी परंपरा है. इनके फैमिली में कितने इनके पूर्वजों भी astrologers थे. So you can tell when you speak to him, you can tell that there's immense wisdom and a lot of insight which he is sharing throughout the community. He does astrology full time, and he's here we're very grateful to have him share his wisdom with us. He's also going to be publishing a book very soon, and the last 10 years he's been doing a lot of research into this particular Vedic astrology. And so please join me in welcoming Dr. Radhikesh Prabhu. Very warm welcome to you.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Very nice to have you. So I just was introducing that, it's kind of in your family. Astrology runs in your family, and obviously you were a medical doctor for many, many years. I think if we just start all the way back there, how did you come to transition from medicine to astrology, and what it means to grow up in a family of Ayurvedic doctors and astrologers? Maybe you can
share
with us.
My earliest memories from India are for going with my grandfather to this small village outside of the city we lived in, where he would take care of, he had a little simple office with 1 desk and 2 benches and 2 little wooden green doors next to a halwai ki dukaan, like literally on the street. And so many people would come there and just walk in his prop. And it's fascinating. I would just watch. I would go with him every day. And then, on the weekends or the evenings, people are coming to his home and he's showing them their charts, or they're showing their charts and giving them solutions in that way. So I just started asking him, hey, please, I want to know, please tell me what this is all about. And so he started teaching me some things. And then he explained to me how his family has been doing this for generations. So it's just what we grew up with, what we saw, and literally it was just a continuation from there. And in many ways, both the medical side of it, but especially the astrological side of it, it just called me. It was literally a calling that you have to do this. This is something you're doing. And in that way, it just kind of took over me. And then the more I studied it, the more I learned on my own. when I was busy in my medical practice, but I tried to, find time. But the more I learned, the more I realized how deep and wonderful and accurate this science is. The more I realized that this can have such a profound effect on our life, our material life. It's a material science. It's a subtle material science, but it's material. So it's something we can use to help us in our material life, just like we use a doctor, we can use an astrologer. So this is how I came to doing it. And literally, when you're seeing it every single day, you're hearing about it, that, oh, this person, is having this difficulty, and I would look at some charts. In this way, you just understand its value at a deeper level.
So, a very obvious question would be that, could your father or grandparents be able to tell that you were going to become a doctor, or you were very much, empowered to do medicine and astrology? Is this something that can be automatically read from your chart itself?
That's a very good question. Yes, you can look at somebody's chart, anybody's chart, and see what they're inclined to. If there's a strong influence of Jupiter or Mercury, those are natural inclinations that somebody may want to become an astrologer. Somebody may want to become a doctor. It indicates being involved in Brahminical activity. So yes, you see those type of things when you look at anybody's chart. Even when I do charts for people, sometimes log apne bacche ke chart dete hai, and say, oh, what's my child going to be when they get older? So it's not like you can say, oh yeah, you're going to become this type of doctor, and at this. But what you can see is that yes, you have an inclination or an ability in certain fields. There's certain skills you have based on your past karma that can be successful in this field.
So before we get into the scientific part of it, of how is it even possible that we can read the positions of the planets? Before we get into that, I just would like to hear a bit more about how you're saying you saw your grandfather. This was in India. Which city was this in?
This is in Punjab, in Kapurthala. It's a small town in Punjab.
Wonderful. Wonderful. And then I remember you saying somehow you all lived in England, then you moved to America, and your whole family is now in America. So a little bit about that transition.
Yeah, I was born in England, and I lived, my early years till age 11 in England. But we would be, back in those days, we would go to India for long periods of time, And when I was 11, we then moved to America. But this is how the whole process took place. So we moved all over, but we still stayed very rooted to what we'd been taught. And it's nice because when my earliest memories in England are actually going to the manor, and we were at the manor almost every weekend since it opened back when,
wow.
It literally just 1973, I believe it opened after that time. So
wow, that's a long time ago. Okay. And then your family moved to America.
Yeah,
and what part of what part of America, and also who then transitioned into the Hare Krishna? How did you come to become a Krishna devotee?
We were, my parents were very favorable to the devotees, even in England. They loved. So we were going to the temple at the manor back in the early days. And so when we moved to Ohio, a small Midwestern state, and Cincinnati, a little town. So at the beginning, there was no temple there. So what happened was that one day, and when you had New Vrindavan, which was a few hours away, one day, some devotees showed up to the local Hindu temple, and my dad saw them, recognized them, and went and talked to them. He said, hey, what are you guys doing here? He said, oh, we want to open a temple here. Like, oh, that's wonderful. He said, where are you staying? Then in typical devotee fashion of that time, they said, we don't know. We have no idea where we're staying. So he said, no problem, you come and stay with me. And, he took them in. And then from there, the first Cincinnati temple opened. And from the beginning, it was something that from the beginning for my parents and for myself and my sister, it was just the most wonderful thing. And we never looked back.
Wow. So it was almost like preordained in a sense. It's almost like Krishna came looking for you and your family as opposed to the other way around almost. He
I don't know.
knocked on your door.
We were very fortunate. We were very fortunate, And in those early days, a lot of the devotees from New Vrindavan would come very regularly to Cincinnati and that area to promote, Krishna consciousness to many people in a bigger city. So we were very fortunate to spend a lot of time with disciples at that time.
I can only imagine. But I also imagine it must have been very difficult for your family as maybe first generation Indians to be in America or England. And yet you overcame that and became a doctor. That can't have been an easy a feat. I in my early days, I also wanted to become a doctor. So I know exactly how difficult it is to, especially in America, becoming a doctor is, there's so many hurdles. I'm very curious as to, is this also written, that the Sukriti to become something despite maybe a lot of struggle? And was it a struggle for you?
Yes, and actually, for me, it's written in my chart. It's pretty clear that it would be a lot of obstacles and struggles, but you would have the ability to overcome them. So yes, it was a great difficulty. Like in my high school of, several hundred people, I was the only person who wasn't white or black, So you feel isolated and alone in that way. But at the same time, because of the association of the devotees, because of being around people who helped me understand the great value of Vedic culture, helped me understand the value of what Srila Prabhupada has taught and given us, and the universality of the Krishna consciousness movement, it allowed me to transcend that and use my Krishna consciousness and use this, difficulty of being one of the only people in my peer group who wasn't, eating meat and drinking alcohol and doing all kinds of stuff. It allowed me to see everybody else in a different light. In England, it wasn't so bad because where we lived in Southall, there were so many Indians. It wasn't an issue there so much. It was more once we got to America that we realized how isolated it can be. We continued, we grew, we used, our service to Krishna as the foundation.
There is a little bit of extra feedback. I don't know how we're going to fix this because we already tried it. If anyone is listening, is the feedback a little bit? Can you hear okay? For anyone listening, you guys could. Right. Okay. Well, until we get the verdict. I find it so fascinating hearing about how we can use the tools of the Vedic culture to overcome the struggles that we all are bound to go through. It's not a question of if, it's a question of when and how much. We're all going to have to go through experiences, difficult experiences and struggles in life. And I'm always fascinated. What are the tools specifically to help, not just us, especially now that we've become parents, how do we pass that on to them, to give them that resilience? Even science talks about it now, to have that resilience, to rise above certain, just the mundane. And it's very enlivening to hear that you used your Vedic culture to empower you as opposed to feel isolated and maybe alone.
Yeah, unfortunately, there is definitely a tendency to sometimes feel like Vedic culture is superior or the Western way is better. But, every culture comes from Vedic culture. And the key is really to take the best of both worlds, to take the best of everything that you see and use it in the best way. But as far as, dealing with difficulties, with problems, it's a very complex process and it's different for everyone. But in the end, especially to teach our children, is how we set the example. It's how we'll deal with difficulties. we can't always change the situation we're in. Of course, we can get an illness, we can get a problem with our spouse, we can get a legal problem, we get a financial problem. There's so many different things that can happen to us. The question is, in that situation, we have a choice. We don't choose the situation, but we can choose how we respond to it. So if we choose to respond to it with faith in Krishna, love, patience, and just doing our best to get through it, but allowing that Krishna is putting us through some karma, then we will respond to the situation in the best possible way. But if we respond to it with frustration and anger and depression and worry, and why is Krishna doing this to me? Why is this happening in my life? Then we will get a different answer. And it requires the help of the people around us, the association of devotees, prayers, and for our children, if we set the proper example of how we deal with problems, then they will also understand how to deal with problems. When I was 40 years old, it was about 10 years ago, I got diagnosed with a terrible disease that could have been terminal, or at the very least would have made me, have all kinds of problems. And I went from a healthy 40-year-old guy, with 3 children, life is good, to just, this very difficult situation that would require, would be life transforming and lead to many unforeseen complications and, even death. And it was a very difficult process, but so I did 2 things. I talked to an astrologer, which of course I did, that helped. But at the same time, we took this obstacle, we took this difficulty, and we used it to go deeper into our spiritual life. Myself, my wife, even my children. And we just accepted Krishna's will in our life. And I said, Krishna, I'm going to do my best to deal with this situation. So I went to the doctors, see what they could do for me, all of these things. And at the same time, with faith, we just continued going on with our chanting and everything else, and on with our life. Then the astrologer told me, this is going to go away in 5 years, don't worry. Medically, I knew that's impossible. Okay, I was like, that's not going to go away. This is going to be with me for the rest of my life, and I'll probably die early because of it. But 5 years later, it was gone. It went away. And I can't explain it even today, how it went away. And even the doctor, the specialist, he's like, I don't know, it's gone. And so those type of things deepened my understanding and desire to know about astrology at an even deeper level. Because I was like, I'm going through difficulties. The whole world is going through difficulties. If someone can look at this through a scientific basis at the more subtle level, you can help so many people to get through their problems, whatever they may be. And that kind of gave me the impetus to do even more in astrology. So this is how we deal with difficulties in our life.
I hear you. I think that balance between full faith and surrender into the bigger picture, acceptance of the struggles that might be coming. I feel like a lot of the times that is where people get stuck, in accepting, okay, this is a difficult situation, but it doesn't mean this is the end or this is all there is. It just means that this is one more step we need to take towards getting to our ultimate goal.
Of course.
And so, what's the word? Strengthening ourselves in that moment can be such a blessing. And like you're saying, it's an opportunity to go deeper into your relationship with the divine. And you can either use that difficult situation to really go down and feel overwhelmed by it, or you can use it as an opportunity to grow spiritually. So I really appreciate that you said that, and that might have been the time when you said you moved. Is that the time you retired from your medical?
That was before.
That was before that. Okay. But eventually, at some point, you made a decision to retire early. Most people don't retire at this age and move your whole family.
Yeah.
Sorry, what was that? I didn't catch it.
Us into different situations. So yes.
Right, right, and then also strengthening that experience with astrology. I can really see the benefit of it now. I was not always a believer in astrology because, it's hard to come across a good astrologer, right? I'm sure you can attest to that. It's also hard to kind of make sense of what's being said. Sometimes it's in the past, and so it's not really of much use. But even in the present, I find it a little bit confusing as to, well, is it written exactly what you're supposed to do? Or it gives you kind of a framework, and a lot of the times I've found that people either get too involved with it and so overwhelmed with what the prediction might be that it's hard to balance, okay, what is my own action, my free will versus what is a prediction? How did you personally navigate that?
We can't always choose the situation we're in. So there's some things by karma that we are destined to go through. Birth, death, old age, and disease do come to everyone. So to some degree, we are going to go through all these issues by the laws of nature. Our wealth, our education, our opulence, many of these things, our influence are ordained. So the question is, how do we deal with that? Or if I know that, okay, I'm going to struggle and work very hard in my life, but I'm not going to achieve anything. And then there's somebody else who doesn't have to do much, and they have all this wealth and opulence. So we can't really change that part of our karma so much, but we can decide how we're going to deal with it. If with faith, trust, love, and patience, we allow Krishna's will to manifest in our life and understand that he's using whatever karma we have to bring us closer to him, to go back home to Goloka and be living in that world forever. And then whatever we go through, we patiently tolerate. We tolerate it and go through it, understanding that it could be so much worse. But if we are in that opulent position and we become prideful and arrogant and use it not in the proper way, and then that becomes a great difficulty, and that brings us more bad karma. So it's always about using whatever we have and making a choice in that moment to do the proper thing.
I really appreciate that point, because sometimes that lack of opulence is the blessing itself.
Yes.
Because it's actually allowing you that growth. That's what I'm hearing you say. And many times the opulence itself, whatever it may be, wealth, beauty, name, fame, it usually is the obstacle for actual deep growth. So that is a really good meditation, because we are going to struggle. We have our, what you're saying is we have our karma is preordained. So and it wasn't like, it's not like Krishna is choosing. Sometimes there's, the prabhav of kala, the effect of time itself, that causes a whole bunch of experiences. But actually, most of the karma-based stuff is our own action. It's our own doing that we fail to somehow recognize and accept. So with that in mind, I want to dial back a little bit and to just actually tackle the idea of astrology. Let's assume we have no idea what astrology is. Okay. If you could just treat me as someone who has no clue, and just tell me the basics of what are we talking about. We're talking about planets and their positions and how they affect us, right?
That's right. That is correct. So let's talk about it in a very simple way. Astrology, first of all, is a science. Okay? It's a material science to help you with your material life. It's a subtle material science because it deals with very subtle obstacles. So it deals with the positions of the planets, the constellations, at the time that you're born and different times throughout your life. Okay? Because we have transits, we have yogas, we have many different aspects involved here. Astrology actually a very complex science. There's birth charts, marriage charts, wealth charts, sibling charts, so many different things. So Srila Prabhupada said at the Arlington Street Church in Boston, May 3rd, 1969, he said that he was asked about astrology. Hey, what is it? He said, it is a science. That science is acceptable by the human society. Medical science, legal science, engineering science. Similarly, astrology, also another science. So just like we use, we have a legal problem, we go to a solicitor, an attorney. We have a health problem, we go to a doctor. In the same way, when there's subtle obstacles in our life, we go to the astrologer. So what they can see is that this planet is causing you difficulty. And these planets, it's very important to understand, these planets are all personalities. They are devtas who are in our life to help us. So you have Brihaspati, Shukracharya, these are all Shani, they're all there to bring us our karma and also to help us if we choose to take that help. So these are personalities who are involved in every aspect of our life. They're designated personalities by Krishna. So every aspect of our life, there are entities who are there to help us, to guide us back home, to bring us back home to Krishna. The choice at every moment is ours, whether we want that help or we want to be the Lord of material nature, just do everything for ourselves. So that help is always there. So what does the birth chart show? What is astrology? What are you looking at when you see this chart with all these waves on it, numbers and things like that? You're seeing a roadmap of your karma from your previous lives. The times when things will go good or bad in your life, and what's bringing that to you, and what you are meant to learn from those things. So you can look at somebody's chart and you could, say, okay, you're going to get an illness at this age. But then you can also see clarity, like, okay, at this point, it will get better. Or this problem will last for you for 2 years and then it will go away. It's also very important because, especially in families, it gives you an idea of the different personalities of, say, your children or your spouse, why they do things, and you have no idea why they're behaving in such a way. Okay? Mm-hmm. Everybody has different inclinations. Everybody's children, different personalities, the way one child may do it this way, the other is, no, I'm not doing it like that. This makes more sense. So it helps you get an understanding of your children's inclinations and what they want to do. And it allows you, like the child is misbehaving, like a couple of years ago, when I was traveling, I had a person come to me and say, a devotee, and say, please, can you look at my son's chart? And I looked at his chart. He's like 6 years old. And I said, okay, over the last year, have you noticed he's misbehaving, he's rude, he's talking back to you, he's not doing what you said? He said, yes, that's exactly what's happening. That's why I wanted to talk to you. And I said, he's going through a sub-period of Rahu. He'll be fine in a year. You don't need to worry. Now, I said, that doesn't mean you don't try to discipline him and tell him that this is wrong and you don't speak like that. I said, you do all those things because that's your duty as a parent. But you also, at the same time, understand that the planetary influences, his karma and his conditioning are there. And so you can see him more than just a product of his karma and his conditioning, that he is an eternal soul, that he's going through this difficulty. And this is also part of your karma because you have to deal with it. And you do your best to deal with that problem. So this is where astrology is beneficial. And this is kind of what we look at the very basic level.
Right. So coming back to this idea of it is a science, like if we work backwards almost, because I have had so many readings in my life, just being, growing up in India, it's kind of part of life.
Sure.
Everybody goes to an astrologer at some point. It's not a question of whether you believe in it. It's just a matter of finding a good astrologer. That's at least in the Vedic culture. But for someone who maybe is not used to the idea of a personification of the planets, these subtle energies, if you could maybe just help us understand how can a planet affect us on a subtle, like you're saying, it's a very subtle science, right? Like it can affect our mood, it can affect our eating habits, it can affect, like you're saying, this child, you're describing the 6-year-old child, it's affecting this person's speech, his ability to learn. It's such a subtle thing. So maybe if you can help me understand how exactly the planetary position can have such a powerful, although subtle, influence in our life.
Sure. So all these planets are working through the modes of nature. And the modes of nature are also very subtle, but we certainly see their effects in our life.
Mm.
Karma, and we see its effects in our life. It's also very subtle. So the planets, these personalities, are directing that. They're allowing that to manifest. Their job, in one way, to use lack of a better word, is to bring that into our life. So in order to understand that, it's a question of just having a basic understanding of karma, a basic understanding of the modes of nature, and understanding that we are not alone on this journey. We are not alone in going through our difficulties. We are not alone. Help is available at every level for us. But if you're not, I won't say brought up, but if you're not understanding of the fact that there are subtleties that we do not understand at the rational or the material level, then that can take some time for people to grow past that. So when I talk to people like that, I basically say that, look, there are energies, there are things in the universe that you do not understand simply because you're not aware of them. But as you go deeper into this science, you will see it. And ultimately, what I tell people is get your chart done.
Mm.
If you see the results, from me or some other astrologer, the things we tell you happen in your life, well, you have your answer right there. The proof of the pudding is in the taste. So that's
Right.
another easy way. And I've had, especially I would travel and do like New York Rath Yatra, a few things like that. So many people would come to me, like husband and wife together, and the husband would want his chart done, and the wife, well, I don't believe in this stuff. I don't want it done. And then after, I was like, no problem. You're not the first one who said that. After 15 minutes, the other person always wants the chart done because everything you're telling them is so accurate. I'll give you one example, very nice example. I had one person, this was a New York Rath Yatra a couple of years ago, said, he sat down, he's like, I'm going to retire in 2 years. No, I'm retiring in 6 months and I'm moving. Where am I moving to? That was the question. He said, and his wife's like, yeah, I want to know, tell us. He's an older fellow. And I looked at his chart and I said, well, I can't tell you what city you're moving to, but I can tell you what direction you're moving because that's how astrology works in many. He said, okay, do it. And I looked at his chart. I said, you're moving to the southwest. And his jaw just dropped because he was moving southwest of his current location from New York to Houston. So, I mean, this is the type of thing that when people don't understand, and that's one of the reasons I'm, writing this book is so people can have an understanding that this is an ancient Vedic science. This is based in our spiritual literature. And by ours, I mean, it's the whole world. It's not just people from India. Vedic society is everybody's. But this is a science like physics and chemistry. It has laws, it has principles, it has reproducibility, which are all things that are necessary for science. So this is how I kind of explain it to people.
I like that. I like that you said that it has reproducibility. So it's true that I have gone to many astrologers and I've actually heard the same thing. Now, if it wasn't reproducible, then that wouldn't, they all tell me the same thing. And a little bit of here and there, roughly the structure is the same. So there is that element that it is reproducible. There is a science. It's not just someone making it up. It's not just someone looking at your face and trying to be like, oh, she looks middle class. So let me just give her a middle class speech.
Sure.
Like a
Right.
lot of, you can have con artists, so people who read your face. And so I feel like a lot of the times people get confused and just think it's just just a con game. It's like just made up stuff that, oh well, it's going to rain tomorrow, or you like to eat good food. It's not like that.
Right. No, it's not.
It's not just platitudes. And so if anyone is questioning astrology, I would second your suggestion that just try it. Find a good astrologer, or contact Dr. Radhikesh Prabhu, and just get your chart done, because you will see that it's it's not something that's just made up. It's very, very specific, and there's no way to deny it after you've heard it once. And so I can understand how, after the husband gets a read, if someone gets a read and a non-believer is there to hear that, then all of a sudden it's like the proof is definitely in the pudding, where once you experience it, you don't understand how it works, and that you're gonna have to let go of that at some point.
Well,
Like you're saying.
it's just like when you go to a doctor, people would come into the doctor's office and, oh, I have, you diagnose them with an ear infection, or their back hurts, or headache, or, pneumonia, whatever it may be. And you give them
Right.
medicine. They don't know exactly how it works, what you're giving them.
Right.
They just swallow the pills you give them, but they get better in a few days. So this is the same thing.
Right. We don't know how the laws of nature work, like you were saying. It's true. We don't know how karma works because our brains are limited. But the idea in the West is that they don't accept this idea of energies, or the bigger cosmic understanding that the Vedic civilization has. So of course they're not going to be able to appreciate the idea that when planets move around, it affects us, that these personalities are directly related to the workings of the cosmos. They're actually part of this integral structure. So it's hard to explain it maybe to a Western person, or someone who doesn't believe in the Vedic cosmology. But if you accept that Vedic cosmology, and that karma and the laws of nature and the modes and everything, it makes complete sense, actually. It makes so much sense that the planets, or these people, these personalities, would be involved in our life and our karma in such a subtle way.
Yes.
So that was that. Thank you for that really wonderful explanation. So if we move on a little further, so I would recommend to anyone who hasn't had a chart done to please do so. But then what do you do after you've had a chart read? Does that mean that destiny's all written, and then we've talked about this already a little bit, then how am I supposed to then understand my free will? How much of it is rigid, and how much of it is able to shift?
That is a question I get all the time, and that's actually a very important thing to understand. Astrology is a very dynamic science. It's not that when something happens, it's written in stone and it's going to only happen this way. There are some things that may happen that way, but for the majority of it, there are things that we can do. I use the example of going to the doctor, and okay, 20 years from now, you may have a heart attack, as the doctor says, or have a stroke, or get diabetes. But he'll also tell you, if you watch your diet, you exercise, you keep your cholesterol down, you have much less chance. So in a very similar way, if there's a certain planet that's affecting us, say it's Saturn, Saturn or Rahu, the biggest culprits in many of our problems. If they are going to cause us a problem, 4 years down the road, and we know that, then we can do something to appease Saturn. And he's a person. It's just like if we do something if we want something from someone, and we know that this person likes sweets, we might make them a cake, or our favorite sports team, we might wear their colors because they like.
Right.
It's the same way with these plants. They're subtle. They don't need us to bake a cake for them. But if we show them respect, like for Saturn, okay, on Saturday, which is Saturn's day, we, give some donation to the poor. And we do it in a mood of humility and respect to Saturn and say, my dear Saturn, you are bringing some difficulty into my life. Out of respect, I am doing this for you. Please minimize my karma that you are giving me. And then they're obligated to listen. As long as we have the proper understanding of their position, that they are not the supreme, that they are servants of Krishna, then they are obligated to listen and help us in this way. So in this way, astrology is very dynamic, that problems that are meant to happen in our life, if we do the right things to minimize those obstacles, those problems will be minimized. But it has to be done in the proper mood and the proper understanding. So this is how we can see that, yes, things may happen in our life, but we also have the ability to change that. We can change the things that are meant to happen.
Right. So subtly, overall structure might be set in one sense. Like, there's only going to be a certain amount of health that might be achievable, or wealth, or comfort. Is that set in some ways, that your amount of success or possibly suffering, is that also your karma? Is the chart a readable version of your karma?
Yes and no. A chart is a readable version of our karma, but at the same time, by our actions, we can change it. If we
can change it.
Yes, if we know what needs to be changed. So if you have some very difficult karma from Shani, causing Saturn, you're going to work very hard, but you're not going to achieve anything. Or there's always going to be obstacles, from the government in anything that you try to do. If we then appease Saturn, those things will be decreased. They will be minimized. And the problem will not be as intense as we expect it to be. So it's a very, karma is a very complicated thing. It's not so much that if you do A, B will happen. It depends on so many subtle factors. With devotees, we have our actions. We have the consciousness in which we do those actions. We have our understanding of our own spiritual nature. All of those things together lead to the result. So it's very complex, but yes, things do get minimized. And it's not always written exactly in stone that, yes, it will happen this way.
Yes, I love the example of how complex karma is, because, usually people think that, for every action, there's a reaction. But it's nothing close to that simple. Every action could have a multitude of reactions, and every reaction could have such a ripple effect to everything, that therefore there's there's kuta, bija, prarabdha, aprarabdha. There's so many different layers of understanding karma that's still remaining in seed form, karma that you're actually experiencing in this life, and karma that's not yet even come to the surface yet. So I can imagine that it's similar to trying to understand karma. It's probably a little bit like that to understand your astrological journey as such. So you're saying it can be adjusted, it can be changed, but I imagine it's not completely nullifiable, or is it? Is it completely erasable?
No, it's not completely erasable, but it can be decreased. Yes, some things we will. You can't, prevent yourself from dying, or if you're meant to get disease. No, it's not. Things that are meant to happen will happen. One thing that I also make sure when we do our readings is to tell people and help them understand that we do deal with our karma in our life, but to make the right choices when those difficulties happen. It's easy to make the right choice when everything is okay, but when difficulties happen, and our attachments are being broken, and suffering comes into our, whether it's from our own body, from our own mind, from the devtas, or from other people, whatever it may be that's doing it. That's the time that we have to make sure we have the strength and shakti to deal with those in the right way. And as much as we difficulties when they're upon us in that proper way, then we can get through a lot of it.
Right. Right. So yeah, I definitely agree that that's when, you only go to the doctor when you're suffering or there's some kind of a problem. You don't go there. So
Exactly.
it makes sense that when you have something you don't understand how to navigate, that's the time to go to an astrologer. Just for everyone's information, you did do my reading last week, and thank you so much, because it was really just profound. I just want to share that with everyone, because I've already been to many astrologers. I know roughly what my chart says. So, I was curious because, it's always nice to hear the versions out there. And I must say, it was very profound. It was, you told me about so many different aspects of my life, which you couldn't have known about. Absolutely no chance that you would have known about it. And yet, it wasn't pinpointed. It was an area of my life that really marked the changes that happened. And of course, it wasn't an in-depth reading. It was an overall reading. And my point in sharing is that I have faith. I really have faith that it can help you navigate those shifts in your life. When a big shift is about to happen, there's no doubt going to be a lot of confusion, and your mind is trying to make sense of it. And we're limited beings. There's emotion, there's pain, there's so much there to if it was just up to the intelligence, we wouldn't be in so much trouble. But intelligence gets clouded over, and so I can really see the benefit of getting this guidance. It's like going to a guru for a certain a type of guidance. How am I supposed to enter this new phase in my life? If you wanted to expand on how is it that we can know, how is it we can know to navigate these new phases?
So yes, you can, and actually astrology can, if you spend enough time doing it, you can get into very detailed analysis of people's lives. I have people who come to me who want to know what's going to happen every week, and we do a reading for that, in that amount of detail. It's what someone needs in their life at that point, if they're but the question is, how do you know who to go to? Is that what you're trying to ask?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, sorry, it's not as clear as I thought. I think it was more to do with I'm trying to express that people who are doubting astrology, I would really want to encourage you to actually try it out, because each phase that you mentioned was so detailed for my chart. It was meaning it was so specific that there's no way you could have known. And therefore, whatever you said about my future, I have faith in that, because from the past, that's my proof. Whatever I heard you say about my past is my proof that whatever you're saying about my future holds a lot of weight, and there must be truth to it. So after speaking to you, I felt really, much at ease about what might be coming, because there's always, the mind is always there to cause you some.
Of course.
So my point is about using this vidya and guidance that's available to us. So that, we're all going through something, and if you are going through something, then I encourage people to actually find an astrologer. Maybe share about that story about that boy who went missing, or that child, just to reiterate this point that it's very specific, it's very powerful.
Yeah, I have a lot of very interesting stories about, things that have happened to people. But yes, you're absolutely right. People need to get some clarity in their life, to know that in all the chaos that we live in, there's a purpose behind all the chaos, at least the chaos. Because if we're not always able to look at the overall big picture of this life or previous lives, and astrology can allow us to do that. that we see that there's a purpose behind all the chaos we're undergoing. But yes, I'll share this story. This was just, recent. I got a call from a family because their child went missing. And they called the police. They couldn't find them, and they called me. This type of stuff happens more often than you would think. Um, but looking at the chart, within 15 minutes, we were able to say, this is the problem, this is where the child is, and the police could find them. And they were fine. There was no problems. Same thing happened, a couple of years ago. Somebody in my one of their parents went missing in another country, and they, didn't know what happened to them. And looking at the chart, we were able to say, okay, this is the problem, somewhat serious difficulty they're going through, and this will take care of it. So these type of things, if someone does come, they'll see that a lot of karmas and difficulties were meant to go through in our life, but with the right guidance, with the right understanding, you can see how these things will resolve in the best way. But yeah, there's many stories, good and bad, where people go through many different problems. But in the end, what you see is that everybody is suffering in one way or another. All of us have one difficulty or another to deal with. And if we get some understanding of, okay, this is Saturn, or this is debilitated Jupiter, this is, whatever planetary influence or multiple influences there is, we can try our best to minimize those planetary influences, and at the same time, understand our own deeper nature as a servant of Krishna and try to get through it. So both ways.
I like them. Yeah, just to pinpoint again, or to point out again, that this is a, like you said in the beginning, that this is a material tool that can connect the material to the spiritual. Because I know a lot of devotees, especially, we're on two extremes. Certain devotees just are like not interested in dealing with karma. Karma is, beneath us somehow, or bhakti is somehow above and beyond karma. But, that's not true for so many of us. It can actually hinder our bhakti in ways that we, Maya Devi is not to be trifled with. She's not someone, to almost mess with. So I don't necessarily believe that we are above our karma just because we are doing bhakti, just because we have taken shelter of Krishna. To the degree that we take shelter, maybe to that degree we can feel our what's the word, freedom or liberation from our karma. But up until then, it's so important to use every tool that we have in a way to be able to execute our bhakti in a better way. Or just on a more material, more superficial level, why would we not take that help? I feel like now, after getting this reading again and another reminder, I really have become a believer that it's not necessarily just to make good money or become successful or live a happy life in the material world. This is actually for a holistic approach to our journey in this life.
Exactly. You make a lot of really points. It is a holistic journey, and everybody, we're all going through a journey. This is our path back to Krishna, and the good and the bad karma is part of that, and it's how we deal with it that makes all the difference. As far as transcending our karma, that's such a high position. Very devotees, Haridas Thakur could be sitting there with a prostitute and, it's not bothering him. That's a very high position. So if someone is not bothered by, what other human beings done, what happens through their body, what happens through their mind, then yes, they're in that position. But that's not most of us. That's not most of us, And we need to know that our material life, and this is what astrology helps with. It helps with our material life. But in many ways, our material and spiritual lives are intertwined. Because say you get sick, you're not going to be able to do your service properly. And it's not that, okay, my karma is to break my arm, you break your arm, it's not, you're not going to go to the doctor and just check. No, you do whatever problem you have. You have some lose your job. You're not going to just chant. You're going to chant, but you're going to try to find another job at the same time. You
Right.
got cancer. You're going to go to the oncologist and see, hey, what can I do about this? Rather than just say, okay, I'm going to just ignore it. You can
Right.
make a decision, but you can also address it. So it's the same way when we have subtle obstacles in our life, things are not going the way we want. Um, Astrology can be very helpful. Actually, it helps in so many different areas. That's certainly one of them, to give clarity to a situation, to help us understand our own karma. For marriage, I think it's so important to marry,
Mm.
like the most important decision you're going to make in your life. That person will affect your happiness, your wealth, your peace of mind, what your children are going to turn out like, what you're going to turn out like, where you're going to live, pretty much everything you can think of, what you're going to eat on a daily basis, all of that is going to be affected. So it's so
Mhm.
important to make sure that those people are compatible. So
Mm.
at every level, at every level. So that's where it's also really important. So, and then,
I was just going to ask, leading on from this point about marriage, that's the obvious one that most people go to the astrologer for. And I can fully agree that it really helped us, me and my husband, and our families in understanding our natures. And we were both Mangalik, and that was a thing that was in our mind. And whatever they said about each other, uh, it's there. It's just evident. His nature, the way it was described by you can obviously see it. I already know this about him, but overall, it stands the test of time. So my question would be, what are the major points in life where you recommend that astrology should absolutely be used? One you're obviously saying is marriage.
marriage, certainly, there's two ways of looking at it. Things that are important to a particular person. So if children are, it's not a bad idea to get an idea of what they're like, get a chart done. I think it's actually very important because you discover the nature of your child. Are they like me? Are they going to be different? Are they more of a Kshatriya nature or Brahminical nature? Are they business-minded? Whatever it may be. That way, or are they very intelligent? Any of these things. You can then take their inclinations and give them the best support. And at the same time, you have two kids whose charts you get done. One shows a high level of intelligence, and one is not as much. So what you're going to do, it's not that you're not going to educate both your children and help them and learn so many things. But if one excels in everything and the other one doesn't do as well, then you can see, it's okay. His nature is not so much into this, and support them in their own nature. That creates much less conflict in the home. That allows children to grow up feeling loved and supported in their own skills. You know, two children in the same house, one may be, have the nature of becoming an artist, and the other one may want to become a soldier. So you will support them in their own ways. This way, we understand our children's karma and their conditioning and help them to become the best person they can. So this is one area where I think it's very important because sometimes parents think that, oh, this is my child, they should be like this. But it's not always like that. It's actually hardly ever like that. Okay, they do their own thing, Uh,
Exactly.
yeah. So this is important for our own peace of mind and that we can deal with it. You know what? This child is just not, this is what they're like, and we're just going to help them in the best way. The other area where it's very important is when we're going through a difficulty. If we're going through a difficult situation and we need clarity, okay, what's going on? When is this going to end? What am I dealing with for the next year, 2 years? Whether it's, a financial problem, people going through, marital difficulties, uh, addictions, whatever the problems may be, a health problem, any of that, get some clarity. Or you're buying a new business. This is one I get a lot. Somebody's thinking about buying a new store or, investing a lot of money in
Mm.
type of things. They will definitely come and say, is this a good time to do this? What am I looking at? Where is this going to go for the future? So anything that's important for you, you should go to the astrologer and get it checked. At the same time, I really love a point you made earlier of people going where it can become almost like people go for everything. And that's not necessary either. Okay. It's not that, every 2 sneeze you have to go to the doctor. Of course not. So go for certainly marriage, clarity on difficult situations, understanding your children, understanding yourselves, and understanding your spouse. I will have people, even after they've been married for a few years, say, look, we're having some difficulties. We want to get kind of our charts and a compatibility analysis and see what we need to do to improve our relationship with each other. And that's also in those type of times people come. So the things that matter in your life that are important, you come for those. That's the thing. Okay.
Okay. Can you tell when a person is going to die for sure? Are you able to predict like the year of death? Because I have heard many people try this, and my parents used to go to astrologers, but it seems that they were wrong because about it. So I'm curious now, is it possible to pinpoint when a person's going to die?
Pinpointing, the time of death is one of the most difficult things in astrology. But yes, it's possible. Some people wish to know, so if they wish to know, we talk about it. And if they don't, then we leave it alone. But yes, it is possible to do that.
Right. Okay. a short and sweet answer. I like that.
It's a very sensitive subject for a lot of people. When I talk to people, yes, there are, astrologically, there are certain things you look at to see when someone is going to die. Absolutely. You can look at it. And you can go to, different, because it's such, even among the subtle, it's a little more subtle. You can go to 2 different astrologers, 3, 4, 5, and you may get a little difference of opinion. Just like if you have some, unusual disease, you go to a few different doctors, they'll give you, different ideas of how to treat it. Same type of thing.
Absolutely.
Yes, I do that for people, but the more important thing is talking to them about the expectation of what the consciousness will be at the time of death. Some people, you see that their consciousness is going to be highly elevated at the time of death. You can see that. And that's actually something that I tend to focus on more. That yes, this will be the time when it comes. But what I see is that you will be 100% focused on the words of your guru, the words of Krishna, and your life will go from here to the most wonderful place. Now, that's not always the case. But yes, so I will tell people that who want to know when they're going to, likely leave this world. But more importantly, I focus on what that consciousness will be at the time.
So I want to also just mention that when I had my chart read with you, what was really reassuring was this idea that you were able to connect the chart, not just obviously to me, but to my spiritual path. So for devotees, for Bhakti practitioners, this is I found that very helpful because you can see, I'm sure you can see a chart in many different ways, but to be able to then translate it in words that I can use on my spiritual path, that was actually I found that very helpful. So there is that slight difference between maybe a devotee astrologer versus maybe a non-devotional, depending on where you want to go in your spiritual path. And that becomes really very helpful. So thank you for that. And if anyone's listening, and it might be very important that you actually visit a devotee astrologer so that you can connect the dots in a practical way. What does it mean for my spiritual life? What does it mean on a maybe day-to-day basis for us? So just moving on slightly, I guess. So there are ways you're saying to change that karma. There are ways to mitigate the effects of the planets. There's ways to, navigate And some of them usually are you wear a certain stone or what are sorry, can you hear that banging?
Yeah, it's okay.
It's probably one of the kids. I should, but sorry about that. So, what are ways to and how to understand them? How, like you were saying, wearing a certain color stone or fasting on a certain day. Um, yes, if you could just maybe expand on that briefly.
Sure. So the most important thing to understand for everyone out there is that these are personalities. These planets are gifts. They have a role to play in your life. They're trying to help you, and they bring us our karma. So when we treat them with respect, just like like we mentioned, if somebody likes sweets, you may bake them a cake if you want something for them, or your sports team, you may wear their colors. And if you know that Shani likes, a certain color, wear black on Saturday, or if Mars likes red, you'll wear red on Mangalvar. This type of thing. So it's all about giving respect and appreciation to the devtas and their role in your life. And if we give that respect and appreciation, whether it's through charity or through yajna or through, gemstones or through mantra, then they are obligated by the laws of nature to respond to us. And as long as those actions are done in the proper mood.
So I like that you said it's obligated. They are obligated to do it. So why, what would you say to the person who says, well, maybe we should just be chanting Hare Krishna and that should be able to alleviate all of these because, Krishna is the supreme and these planetary personalities just get their power from Krishna himself. So, if we just chant Hare Krishna, we shouldn't have to worry about any of this.
Yes, you can certainly do that because in the end, you can say everybody gets their empowerment from Krishna. So if you break your arm, don't go to the doctor. You can just chant and let Krishna take it. But these are material things. It's the same way.
Yes.
These are our material karmic activities. So our material karmic activities are given by the devtas. So even when Krishna created the entire material creation, he glanced over it, but then he took the form of Shambhu for creation. He doesn't get involved so much in the day-to-day material life of people. So yes, you can just leave it alone and chant to Krishna, leave it at that. There's nothing wrong with doing that. But if you want to directly address the problem in your life, I mean, if you get, you lose your job, you can say, okay, I'm just going to leave it to Krishna. I'm not going to do anything else. You can do that. But if you have the ability to do something directly to take care of that problem, and these devtas, they're all appointed by Krishna. This is part of the Vedic culture, you respond to them and they will directly take care of that problem for you. And they are obligated. These are the rules and responsibilities of that exchange.
Wonderful. Yes, I like what you said, that even though Krishna just glances at the material nature and then creation happens, but he doesn't himself come. When he gets in contact with material nature, he becomes Lord Shiva. So this is a very powerful point that, it's too much to ask to be like, Krishna, please take care of all of my karma. In one sense, we shouldn't be asking for that. That's not why we chant the Hare Krishna mantra. So I like that you're mentioning that if we want to tackle a problem in our life, then we should do the tools that are given in a material realm. We should follow the directions that Krishna himself has set up to deal with these more minute, more specific problems, more subtle problems, instead of putting our hands up in kind of like a almost defeatist mentality. Well, I'm just going to chant Hare Krishna and everything should be okay. Of course, everything will be okay, but that's actually not the goal of chanting Hare Krishna. That the goal of Hare Krishna Mahamantra is pure love of God.
That's right.
Oh my goodness. I'm so sorry about that noise.
okay.
We've got the handyman in today. Right. So a lot of people have been asking, how can we get in touch with Prabhu for a reading? I know I've already mentioned the book. So many people have asked about your contact.
Yeah, my website is radhikeshdas.com, and email is yourdestiny108@gmail.com. That's probably the best. Oh, perfect. There it is.
Right. So
My wife.
emailing you. Thank you, Premanjali ji. So we're gonna maybe just take one or two questions because we do have a few minutes left. But while we do that, I just wanted to uh, thank you so much for coming on, because I feel like even though I've been around astrology my whole life, there's something very important when I connected it to my devotional, my spiritual experience. So this is the first time I've had it read properly by a devotee. So anyone who wants to get their astrology read by a devotee, I highly recommend Dr. Radhikesh Prabhu. Sorry, I'm just looking through questions, therefore I'm a little bit sidetracked. Hare Krishna Prabhu, why do different astrologers say different things?
So different astrologers will say different things because two reasons. Number one, this is a very complex science, and people can see things in different ways based on their own knowledge, their experience, the way they've seen things manifest in the past. Just like, you go to two different doctors, they may give you two different opinions. Same type of thing. So people can see things differently.
Right. That makes sense. Someone was asking about what is your prediction for COVID and when are we going to get out of this, lockdown? We're in England. We're still in lockdown where I am.
Okay.
The children are going to school, but nothing is open. And, I'm sure people are feeling a lot of heavy energy. Are you still in lockdown in Florida?
No, we're not in lockdown. We have to wear masks all the time, but
Yeah.
we're not in lockdown. So COVID, there's a lot of influences there, but my prediction is probably May and June, you're going to start to see things get better. July and August, it'll be a little stable. And there'll probably be a little bit of worsening, maybe September, October again. But then near the end of the year into next year, things will be peaceful. So it's going to be a little up and down. And that's going to be both in the suffering people go through. It's going to be in the mental distress, the confusion people go through, the financial difficulties people go through, and the disease itself. They're all kind of all related together. But by a lot of people whose charts I'm doing, that by the end of the year into next year, a lot of their problems are lifted, whether it's a financial problem or a stress problem or a relationship problem. Over and over again, by next year, things are kind of like getting better. So looking at that and the transits, I think it'll be a couple of months from now, people are going to think it's perfect, but then it's going to get not so perfect for a little while. Things going to get a little worse, but probably not to the same degree it has been. Okay. And then by December into January, we'll see things improve again.
Wonderful. Okay. So, just really briefly, how can you tell what's happening on a global level? How can you just talk about the collective karma, like how to understand? Like,
so you can look at planetary movements, not just for people. You can look at planetary transits for companies. You can look at the astrology chart for ISKCON. You could look at the astrology chart for the United States or England or India. You can look, and then you can look at a general astrological chart for the world by looking at the motions of the planets on a daily basis through the cities and things like that. And based on that, you can make more global predictions. And of course, it'll vary a little bit for each individual, but you can make those global predictions also in that way.
So we are connected in some sense, our karma must be connected, like, because we're living in England. India is not in a lockdown.
Yeah.
I've always heard there's collective karma, and I guess you can also see that through the astrology. It's
Especially
very interesting.
Especially when you get very heavy planetary influences like a debilitated Jupiter and things like that on a more global level, it can cause a lot of problems. So yes, at one level or another, our karma is, it's collective within our family, a bigger group of friends, or it's collective in the people who are all on a plane together that crashes. And then there's certainly times when we have collective karma as a world that manifests at times like this.
Right. There's a lot more questions coming in right now. I'm just going to put it out there, even though I know it's in bad taste, because this is one question a lot of people, why do astrologers ask for money? I find it very fascinating, because they'll even say this to like devotees who come up. Well, why should devotee musicians need money? Because I mean, I would ask the counter question: why do you feel like you should be given a service without any money?
This is a very wonderful question, actually. Astrology is a Brahminical service. It's not a Vaishya activity. It's not a business. Okay? This is a Brahminical service. So our Vedic society and parampara says when somebody does a service for you, especially a Brahminical activity, there is an exchange. That is an exchange of respect, an exchange of appreciation. Okay, this is how our society, our Vedic society, has said we do this. So it's not about how much you give. It's about the heartfelt exchange. Okay, somebody may give a palace, and somebody may give a bag of chipped rice, but the exchange in Krishna is bhava, bhavagrahi janardana. He accepts the mood. So this is the same way. But in the modern day, what's happened is that people don't know how much to give. They don't, that mood of dakshin in many ways has been lost. And for that reason, sometimes you have to tell people this would be the appropriate amount to give. So loads of money is not, I can't speak for what anybody else does and how much they charge or whether that's too much. But the key is that it's an exchange. You're getting a Brahminical service. And for that, you go to the doctor and you get some treatment. You would, get some. You would certainly pay them for that. So I'll just leave it at that. It's an exchange that is done with respect and appreciation for what somebody is doing for you.
I've also heard that if you take wisdom from a brahmana or from your guru and you don't give anything in return, actually, that knowledge cannot come to bear fruit. So if someone were to take something from a brahmana, like blessings or something, or wisdom, and not give anything back, it actually becomes useless in our life. So it's really important, this idea of exchanging. When you get something, you must give something. Otherwise, there's no phal. The fruit does not manifest in our life.
Yeah, and the same appreciation is not there. And at the same time, for Brahmins, who are the head of Vedic society, the foundation in many ways, for them to be able to keep doing their Brahminical work and to be able to do it with focus, they need reciprocation for what they do, because they will also have to have responsibilities as grihasthas. But for them to do their work, if they don't get remuneration, well, then they need to go, in addition to spending less time on their astrology or their yajna, they need to work at the grocery store, at the plumbing department, whatever it may be, and that's not what we want, We want Brahmins to be able to focus on being Brahmins, but it's a Brahminical activity. It's not a Vaishya activity. That's very important to know.
Very important. A few people have asked, is it necessary to have a time of birth? Because some people maybe not have their time of birth, especially maybe Westerners who are not really interested in that kind of stuff. or anyone who doesn't know their time of birth, not just Westerners?
We can certainly do a chart without the time of birth. It's better if you have it, or at least within an approximate amount of time. If you don't, what I generally do is have the person just tell me some important events in their life: marriage, initiation, children, any health problems or big, traumas, or when the children are born. And with that, we can kind of work backwards and figure out the time, or at least close enough to give relatively accurate predictions. So no, it's not necessary.
Right. So obviously it's ideal, but if you don't have it, then you can extrapolate or interpolate to other major events to maybe create a more of a structure for the chart.
Yes, that is correct.
But in essence, you need that birth time to kind of be able to really predict.
Yeah, you can't predict events in a person's life without a birth time, whether you are given it or you figure it out. But yes, the birth time is very important.
Interesting. So yeah, important to note, because many people don't, if you don't believe in astrology, you're not going to note down the time of your birth, but what a great loss it would be.
Yes.
So many questions, many about the fate and destiny. I think this still gets people very confused. It can only trace the path of destiny or fate. It cannot change what has been decided for you to perform in this life.
No.
We already talked about this a lot, Divyakarji. If you hear the earlier part of this, unless you want to add something here as well.
No, I think we've covered this topic. So
we have covered, just to repeat maybe.
Yeah. Yes, astrology can give you guidance of the things that are going to happen in your life. But at the same time, by performing certain actions, depending on what the astrological influences are, you can change that karma in your life.
Right. Maybe while I'm looking for the last question, there's many around the same theme. I think people have a hard time understanding choices, destiny, astrology. I think it's gonna.
Yeah, I think this is another good way of asking it is that many times we don't control the situation we're in, but we control the choice we make in that situation. And as we choose to serve more on the devotional side of things, or accept Krishna's will in our life, then the results from that good action, from that good karma, give us even better results going down the road. Because what happens when we make a wise or proper choice once, we get in the habit of making it again and again. And as we make wiser choices, the better and proper choices, our karma, at least our future karma, will be much better.
Right. So I like what you're saying here. So our choices can change our destiny in a sense, but obviously it can't change the astrology, or am I saying that wrong? It can't change your actual.
I think you're saying that correctly. It's always yes and no. These are it's such a subtle science, and karma in itself is very complex. If we focus so much on, well, is it going to do this? Is it going to do that? Will A lead to B? Then we lose the bigger picture that our life is under the control of more subtle energies than we realize. And if we allow ourselves to just accept and see that in our life, when difficult times come or good times come, then things will become much more clear in our life, and we will deal with life in a much better way.
Exactly. I mean, what would you say to someone who's like, well, actually, ignorance is bliss, knowing too much about your bad karma or good karma? A part of us might be thinking, well, it's okay, just best to not know what's going to happen and just live as if this is it, my four walls. A lot of people have this mentality, well, who knows about the next life? Chalega, let's just live as if you live once. You only live once.
Of course.
Do you have any information?
There are many people who live like that. And that is, there's if you don't want to know about your astrology, then you don't go to an astrologer. It's totally fine, you know. But then when difficulties come into your life, you will be bewildered. You will be struggling mentally and be like, oh my God, what's happening to me? Why are these problems happening? When there is the opportunity, it's just like going to the doctor. I always bring medical analogies in. You know, I don't want to know if I have diabetes or cholesterol, high blood pressure. I'll just wait 10 years from now till I have a heart attack, you know?
Exactly.
Do that. You can do that if you want to. But at the spiritual level, if you just live like you have this one life, it's very sad and dangerous because you're losing the greatest opportunity in the world as a human being. This is the one time in our human form of life we have a chance to connect our life, to understand who Krishna is, to understand our relationship with Krishna, to go after so many lifetimes to finally say, I want to love Krishna and I want to get out of this material world. So take a little opportunity to do that. Don't keep yourself so close off that you miss this greatest human form of life.
Wonderful. Wow, it's I really appreciate what you just said, because if we live as if, well, I'd rather not know, and you live life like kind of just enjoying to the max,
Yeah.
it's like not going to the doctor when you clearly might have health issues and just ignoring it, putting your head in the sand like it's not really happening. By doing that, we might have temporary relief in the sense that, well, you don't have to think about it. You don't have to address it. Addressing a problem is much harder than pretending that it doesn't exist.
Yes.
And I like that the saddest part that you pointed out is that we're losing the chance to really live life to the greatest potential, which is in the spiritual way, which is in utilizing this life, this opportunity that we've got for a much higher purpose, which is to, go back home or reestablish this relationship and live to our greatest potential. We won't be able to do that if we choose ignorance.
Yeah, that's exactly right. We are stuck in this material world, and it's like a jail, whether you're in the golden cage jail or you're the golden bars or the iron bars, we're all still in jail. And if we just try to take a moment to look beyond, where we are and our four walls or what's going on around us, we will have the greatest opportunity to be truly free. Because when we establish our true bond with Krishna through parampara, we are tied in to the most blissful, happy, stable, and strong place you could ever imagine. Krishna will not let you go. From there on, will not let you go. And that is a very safe, secure, and in honesty, it's the only place to find shelter in the world is through the shelter of Krishna and his devotees. Otherwise, we are bewildered. You're like sailing on an ocean in a tumultuous sea, dark and windy all around you, and you're alone. Even with 1,000 people around you, you're still alone. You're a solo sailor. But as soon as we touch ourselves to the parampara, as soon as we take mercy of that and take that shelter, we have the guidance of so many people bringing us across the material ocean and taking us back home to the shining Goloka that's awaiting all of us.
Wow. Arrivo.
This is what we all do.
Wow. Wow. On that note, I can't beat that. That is just, that was absolutely wonderful. We're going to end on that note. I just want to thank you so, so much for reminding us that we're all trying to cross this ocean of existence. And it's actually quite scary and it's very painful. And no matter how many people we're around, we have to do it alone unless we take this chance, this rare opportunity to get guidance from spiritual gurus, spiritual spiritual seekers who are connected with that anchor, who can actually help us get our boat across this ocean of darkness, as you said. So thank you so much to Radhikesh Prabhu. Please, for anyone who's interested, if you can remind us your email address again.
Yes.
It is?
It's my wife. Hopefully she'll put it in there again. It's
Well,
yourdestiny108@gmail.com. And then Radhikesh Das is my website.
radhikeshdas.com.
Yes.
And when can we expect your book to come out?
Probably, I would say about another 2 months, perhaps less.
And what is it called?
That's still being determined. We have many different options, but I'll definitely let you know, and I'll put it on Instagram.
Okay.
All of that when it comes out.
You're on Instagram, Prabhu?
Yes, yeah. Instagram,
okay.
Plus, yes. And Facebook.
Sorry. Okay.
Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube, Radhikesh Das. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you to all our viewers today. For the most part, we had about 150 people watching. And I really wanted to thank you all. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact Radhikesh Prabhu. And we'll see you next week. Next week, we have a wonderful speaker. We've got His Grace Hari Parshad Prabhu joining us, and we'll be talking about Guru, another very similar topic, I would say, trying to understand who is Guru, what is Guru, how to approach Guru, how to find Guru, how to serve Guru. So if you have any questions about that, please, join us next week. Hare Krishna. Thank you. Thank you so much, Radhikesh Prabhu.
Thank you.